Ever wondered if the US government has seriously tried to weaponize psychic powers? Well, today we're cracking open a declassified file on Project Stargate, a real multi-million-dollar program that tried to do exactly that.
So, here it is. This is the actual cover page of a formerly secret document from the Defense Intelligence Agency, dated June 28, 1991. And let me tell you, this isn't just some memo. This is the blueprint for Project Stargate, their official long-range comprehensive plan for psychic spying. So what was the whole point of this? Well, the document spells it out pretty clearly. Congress had tasked the DIA with creating a serious, scientific, multi-year plan. And the mission? To figure out and then harness these anomalous mental phenomena, which is basically what you and I would call psychic powers, and use them for spying.
Okay, to really get what was going on with Stargate, you gotta understand their language. They weren't throwing around words like magic or supernatural. No, the DIA created a very specific, almost clinical-sounding dictionary to define exactly what it was they were studying.
The big umbrella term they used for everything was anomalous mental phenomena, or AMP for short. It was their go-to neutral phrase to talk about these unusual or undeveloped human capabilities. They believed these abilities were somehow linked to human consciousness itself, and they broke them down into two very distinct and pretty fascinating categories. And this is where it gets really, really interesting. On one side, you've got anomalous cognition, or AC. This is all about getting information. Think remote viewing, or ESP. It's the power to see things with your mind, stuff that's hidden or miles away. Then, on the other side, you have anomalous perturbation, or AP. This is about influencing the physical world, like telekinesis. It's the power to change things with your mind. So one is passive observation, and the other is active intervention. All right, let's get into the plan itself, because Stargate wasn't just some wacky idea they were kicking around. Nope, this was a super detailed, structured, long-range program designed to get real results. And just look at how ambitious this thing was. We're not talking about a couple of guys in a basement with some tarot cards. They were planning to pull in findings from quantum mechanics, general relativity, even AI. They were dead serious about trying to find the hard science behind the supernatural. This wasn't just some pie-in-the-sky wish list. They had a detailed, year-by-year schedule with specific scientific goals. In '92, they're digging into theoretical physics. By '93, they're already running lab tests on how these powers might be transmitted. And by '95, they're doing long-range tests and even looking at whether there's a genetic component to all this. This was a serious long-term commitment.
Okay, so the big question is, how on earth do you find people who can actually do this stuff? Well, what you're looking at right now is the actual, very complex flowchart from the plan's appendix, laying out their whole selection process. It was definitely not as simple as just asking for volunteers.
So let's break that crazy chart down. It was basically a 3-step process to find their psychic spies. First, they'd screen huge groups of people, especially folks like photo interpreters who are already good at visual analysis, to find anyone with a potential natural gift. Then, they'd put those people through a whole battery of psychological and physiological tests. And finally, they'd crunch the data and pick only the absolute best to join the program.
And hey, if you actually made it through all that, well, that's when the real work started. The operatives were trained using this whole menu of advanced techniques. They were planning to use hypnosis, even dream analysis, to cut down on mental noise. They'd use biofeedback to help operatives get conscious control over their own bodies. The end goal of all this? To sharpen their natural psychic abilities into a weapon-grade intelligence tool. But, this all begs the one big question. Why? Why pour all this time and all this money into it? The answer wasn't just scientific curiosity. The answer, laid out right there in the document, was all about getting a strategic edge. Just look at this chart from the plan. It lays out all of the end goals. And they weren't thinking small. They imagined using these psychic abilities for a massive range of intelligence ops: counterterrorism, fighting drug trafficking, finding hidden resources, and even checking up on the health of foreign leaders. I mean, the stakes were just incredibly high. This quote really gets to the heart of it all. If they could get reliable psychic intel, it could mean finding hostages, predicting enemy attacks, or even, get this, communicating with submerged submarines, which is basically impossible with regular technology. And you gotta understand, this was never meant to be some small, secret project tucked away in a DIA basement. The plan was to roll this capability out across the entire U.S. intelligence and military community. We're talking about potential collaborations with the NSA, NASA, the Navy, and the Air Force, the whole shebang. Okay, I know what you're probably thinking. This all sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, right? But you have to see who was giving this project its scientific backbone. This wasn't some rogue operation. It was being watched over by a committee of very respected mainstream scientists. Just take a look at the names on their scientific oversight committee. Seriously, these weren't some fringe characters. We're talking top professors of neuroscience, psychology, even astronomy from universities like Stanford, Yale, and Cornell. But the real jaw-dropper on this list? That's Dr. Melvin Schwartz. This guy wasn't just any physicist. He was an associate director at a major national lab who had won the Nobel Prize in Physics just 3 years before this plan was written. Having a Nobel laureate on board, that gives the whole thing an unbelievable level of scientific street cred. And, of course, they had the cash to back it all up. The document called for at least $2 to $3 million a year, and that was just for outside research contracts. In today's money, you're looking at well over $5 million. Every single year, all to research psychic spying. So what are we supposed to make of all this? You've got a secret government program, backed by Nobel laureates, with a multi-million-dollar budget, all dedicated to exploring psychic communication and remote viewing. Is that the cutting edge of science pushing into the great unknown? Or is it science fiction bleeding into national security? What this document proves is that for the Defense Intelligence Agency, that line wasn't just blurry. It was a strategic objective.